The way I define success is, can I live at peace? Can I live with the choices I make? Do I have good morals and values? And of course, I struggle with that just like everybody else. I mean, you can't be perfect all the time, but I think that to me, that defines success more than how big is my company? How many doors do I manage? I see so many people give up their health to make money, and then later in life, they have to give up their money to try to regain their health. I've been lucky enough through meeting you, having some of the other experiences I've had to be able to create a business and then other businesses where I'm able to live semi-retired. And what I mean by that is I'm able to use my time the way that I want to use my time and still provide for my family.
Welcome, entrepreneurs, to Pay or Quit,
where we reveal the gritty truth behind business success.
People see the glory, but not the struggle it takes to get there.
We're here to share the real stories of entrepreneurs navigating the tough intersection of business and relationships. I'm Tony Cline.
And I'm Shawn Johnson. And together we'll guide you through the real challenges faced as serial entrepreneurs.
Join us for the untold stories behind the scenes.
Buckle in, it might get messy. So we thought it would be good for our audience to get to know us as hosts a little bit better. So today, I'm going to be interviewing Tony like we've been interviewing our guests in the past. And I'm pretty excited about this, Tony, because, you, my friend, are like an onion. We got to break that.
I stink?
It was not an insult. I'm just
okay.
One layer at a time, baby. So anyhow, Tony,
right.
Thanks for being willing to do this. I think this will be fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I know you mentioned that we're doing it as a 2-part series, and so I'm going to interview you next, the next time we do this. So I'm excited that I get to go second. So whatever you throw at me, I get a little bit of chance to, do some research and come back at you with something strong and powerful. So
now I asked you before we got started, is there anything that's off limits? And you said no. Here we go.
That's
See,
right.
Let's dig in. The only thing holding me back today is paybacks. Well, All right, Tony, take me back. You had let me ask you it this way. Has there ever been a pivotal moment that was a defining moment in your personal and your entrepreneurial career?
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. Definitely more than one. I know there was the moment, I think we've talked about it, we've shared, where you and I spent some time out in the desert in Moab doing some big dreaming, big thinking. That was definitely pivotal. Changed the direction of where I'm headed with my career now as opposed to where I was headed before. On the personal side, there was definitely some interesting times. I was really sick back from like 2005, 2006, to the point where my organs started shutting down. My body was starving to death. It's pretty simple. I have celiac, which just means I have to eat gluten free, avoid gluten, can't use any products with gluten in it. But back then, almost 20 years ago now, 18 years ago, it just wasn't that common, and it was misdiagnosed. So they were doing all of these treatments and giving me different things to try and doing elimination diets and eliminating all of these different foods. And basically it got down to, I was eating like steamed chicken and just raw, or not raw, but plain hamburger, flour tortillas. But the flour, the gluten in the wheat is what was continuing to trigger. And so my body had an autoimmune reaction where it was causing my body to attack itself. And so I wasn't able to absorb any nutrients through my intestines. And so my body was essentially starving to death no matter what I was eating. And so that was a big moment where I wound up being really out of my office more than I was in for 6 to 8 months, 8 to 10 months, something like that. And I had to really figure out, how am I going to delegate everything that needed to happen in my office in order to keep the office going. And so it's kind of, you asked me out personal, but that's kind of where it transitioned into the health thing. And I've got a big health journey from that point forward that also really changed the trajectory more so than anything else in my life.
Because the medical world didn't really understand what was going on. How did you guys finally find the solution? How did you find the elimination process to go through to actually figure out what was going on?
Yeah. Well, we went through that from 2005, 2006, and I don't remember this real well because I was in a lot of pain, and a lot of this is what my wife's told me after the fact. But she told me that there was a moment where I was laying in bed struggling, and at this point, the pain was so bad from the stomach to the head. Everything was so bad that each breath was like, I wasn't day to day, I wasn't minute to minute. I was like breath to breath, just really trying to get through that pain. And she got to the point where she said, I need to either get you to the Mayo Clinic or we need to do something. We went through the medical channels, and there was a doctor that she found was a reference from somebody. I don't know where she got the reference, but it was a doctor that was they did sort of Eastern medicine, but also they were a cancer doctor, and he was able to run some tests, and based on just my symptoms, was able to suggest that maybe it was this celiac thing. And so we ran some tests, and they confirmed that that's what it was. And it takes about 2 years for your intestines to heal up. But we were pretty desperate at that point just to figure out uh, what was happening. I mean, I had 3 young kids at the time. My middle daughter really took it hard. She was a daddy's girl, and for her to witness me just basically crumbling and not being able to get out of bed for days at a time, that had an impact on her. I think it still has had a long-term lasting effect where she has a filter that she runs things through where it's she's always worried that something like that's going to happen again.
Just take me back to the period of time that this was. How often or how long were you in and out of the hospital?
I would go in, and I really wouldn't stay that long because they didn't know what to do with me. So they'd give me some fluids, IVs, give me some shots, and I'm drawing a blank on what they were, but they were pretty significant painkillers, and they would give me some shots, and the pain would subside for a little bit, and they'd send me home. So I was in and out of the hospital, I don't know, a dozen times or so, um, in that year leading up to it. But then they just send me home, and so I remember one day I was in bed. The longest I had this migraine stomach issue was about 17 days straight, and that was that was the
Mm.
longest that I'd suffered with that.
S- So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like all they knew what to do was to treat the symptoms and not really they couldn't understand what the problem was. And so you
Yeah.
found this Eastern medicine doctor and he ran tests and he figured out, well, you got to stop eating gluten. What were those symptoms before you got to that point? Like you're the worst I've ever heard. My wife also as you know, my wife is going through the same problems and it started at COVID. So double whammy there. But
Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah.
those symptoms are wild.
Yeah, my symptom it's kind of like the way it was explained to me, it's kind of like you've got a car that just starts breaking down, and celiac kind of causes different symptoms in different people. So some people get really, really bad stomach issues, and then other people get really bad headache issues because what it does is it's a autoimmune reaction, and so the body attacks itself and just depends on what it starts shutting down first or what it starts affecting. So I had the stomach issues, but mine was primarily like really bad migraine headaches where it would look like you're looking through a clear straw, and then there'd be a bright point at the end. So if you're looking at a bright light through a clear straw, and I remember there was one point where I was laying, and this was even after we had been diagnosed because it takes a couple years for your intestines to heal up. And there was a moment where I'm at a rental property. uh, Luckily, it was one of the ones that I owned, but I was laying. I was just checking something out. It was vacant, and I wound up getting one of these really bad headaches. And so I went into the bedroom, shut the door, turned off the light, went into the closet, shut the door, turned off the light, laid on the floor, and the light was still too bright that was coming into the room, like
Mm.
underneath both of those doors. And I just remember, like, God, I don't know how I'm getting home, but like somebody help me somehow get me home. And I remember being in the car on the highway, and the next thing I remember was being at the house with or pulling into my driveway. I had no shoes or socks on, and my shirt was kind of buttoned down. And the reason for that was just anything on my arms, just legs, anything, the fabric just felt like it was attacking my skin. The nerves were just firing so bad. I had to just get that off. But I don't even remember really how I got out of there and got in my car and got home. So
Amazing. So you had amazing people around you to keep your personal life and your business life afloat. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I appreciate that question because I was a big control freak. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. We got to do it our way. We got to do it, this is the only way to do it. I'm the only one good enough to do it. And as I found myself laying in bed for days, sometimes even weeks at a time, I had a decent sized real estate brokerage and we had the property management arm. And it got to the point where I really had to decide what is it that needs to get done and how can I delegate as much of that as possible. I went from being the guy that I'd listen to phone calls and I'd then, somebody would put the phone down. I'd go around and I'd go into their cube or their office and I'd say, well, what were you guys talking about? What was that? Who was that? You should have said it this way. And I went from that to being my business is collapsing. Uh, I don't really know how we're going to keep this thing going. And I had Barb at my office and then Pam at home, and they started working together to just figure out how to do as much as possible. And that wound up turning into a blessing because I then learned how to delegate. And one of the sayings that you've heard me say this before that I kind of live by now is I should only do the things that only I can do. And I should have people on my team that can do everything else. And if there is somebody on my team that can do that, I should get out of the way and let them. And I should focus on doing the things that only I can do. I never would have learned that lesson had I not gone through this experience because I would have just been so tied into I'm the guy, I got to control everything. And yeah, I was just a really big control freak. So looking back, 20 years later, I can say that was a great moment for me. At the time, this is slightly dramatic, but it's not untrue. It was almost life or death at that point.
Life has an interesting way of resetting our expectations, don't they? Or maybe our
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah,
It's wild. Well,
yeah.
well done. So so since then, well, that was, let me just be clear, that was during your time at Cliff Dwellers, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I bought a brokerage in 2000. They were a small property management company. They managed like 31 doors, but they had a big brokerage presence, and I really just wanted the brokerage presence. And so when I bought that, it came with this property management thing. And as you know, I've learned how to manage properties and manage property management companies very well. And now I'm doing coaching, consulting on that side. But really, I was really intrigued by the brokerage in the downtown Denver loft and condo market.
Awesome. So how do you define success now, and because of that, did your definition of success change?
Oh, for sure. I was taking my laptop to bed.
Mm.
I'd wake up at 2 in the morning with a laptop on my lap in bed, typing up a real estate contract. Like I really was I wanted to be rich and I wanted to be famous. And I was okay faking it in either one of those areas until I was able to make it. And sometimes we'd have fantastic months and, running a brokerage and having, I had multiple brokers that were working for me and we had a great location in downtown. And so some months were just fantastic and some months were, hey, not so great. But the stress of all of that finally caught up to me. And so I through this experience, I've redefined success as, and I think age has a little bit to do with it too. I wanted to be the alpha in the room, not so much guy to guy, but like in a business setting, I wanted to be like, I'm top dog. Look at me. Um, and I've very much shifted from that now. I'm more. I define success as I want to live at peace. You can have success. I can have success. As a matter of fact, as a coach from Little League, I coached over 30 seasons of basketball in Little League, and we were doing 3 seasons year round. I loved watching other people achieve things that they couldn't do at the beginning of the season, and then being able to do that at the end of the season. And so for me, the way I define success is, can I live at peace? Can I live with the choices I make? Do I have good morals and values? And of course, I struggle with that just like everybody else. I mean, you can't be perfect all the time, but I think that to me, that defines success more than how big is my company? How many doors do I manage? How I see so many people make give up their health to make money, and then later in life they have to give up their money to try to regain their health. And I've been lucky enough through just meeting you and having some of the other experiences I've had to be able to create a business and then other businesses where I'm able to live semi-retired. And what I mean by that is I'm able to use my time the way that I want to use my time and still provide for my family. And so there's a lot of people that are heads down, and this is fine for them. I'm not throwing stones, but I'm not the guy that's going to work 60 or 70 hours a week anymore. That doesn't sound like success to me. I don't care how much money you make. You can't you can't get that time back, right? So you know how much time I go out and spend out in the woods and up in the mountains, watching the sunrise, watching, the herd of elk get up in the morning and graze. And um, I don't think you can buy that. I just don't think that there's any amount of money that I'd be willing to trade that for.
Yeah, there's so much to be said about actually pausing in life and taking a breath and breathing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what are some personal values that you hold dear to your heart?
Well, one of my core values, and that rolls over into my company, is to be courageous. And I've written an article about the difference between bravery and courage. And bravery, to be brave, is to charge into battle with no fear. And I think we'd all love to be brave, but I actually celebrate the people who are courageous. And courageous, or being courage, being courage or being courageous, is to feel the fear and do it anyway. And I've come to sort of celebrate. It doesn't matter what you're doing at what level. If you're trying to better yourself and expand what you currently have, and expand what you want to get, want to be, want to have, want to do, to me, that's one of those core values that I support anybody that's doing that. I really love to see people not settle. There's a society of people that are just settling because they either don't know the path or they've been beaten down so much that when somebody raises their hand and says, "Hey, I want to be better. I want to do more. I'm willing to step out and be vulnerable and say I'm willing to be courageous." To me, that just fires me up. Like I'll support that to the ends of the earth. I just really love watching people say, I admit, here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Charging on in spite of fear. I love it.
Yeah.
One thing I
Yeah.
know about you too, Tony, is that you have a deep belief system. When you do not believe in something, it's like pushing a rope. But when you believe in
Yeah.
it, you'll move mountains. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that. Why do you feel that way?
Um, I'll that's some inside baseball right there. The belief system. I know we struggled with that when we were business partners. We had some things that, um, under your leadership, we were going to try to accomplish, and then We had some things in the company, maybe some people that didn't necessarily support some of those. And I'm not going to go in and throw dirt anywhere on this, but there were some things we were doing in our company that I didn't believe in, and you and I had very similar companies before we merged where we treated people really well. We had a high level of communication, not necessarily a lot of communication with our clients, but those clients were valued relationships for us. And when we started changing some things in our company that caused there to be a separation between what I believed our deliverable goods should be in the way we provided service and the way we were actually starting to do that. Um, yeah, that was really tough for me. And I did, looking back, there were times where I shut down and didn't support something because I just didn't believe in it. And you're right. If I believe in it, I'll charge to whatever. I'll carry the torch. But if I don't believe that it's the right thing to do, if I don't believe it's right to do for people, I just I can't support it. And it's probably a weakness just as much as it is a strength because there are situations you find yourselves in, no matter who you are, where you have to support things that you don't like or don't agree with. And I could do a better job with that. The flip side of that is because I have that belief system, if I believe in it, there's no stopping us.
Yeah, I take that with a little bit of reflection. In previous roles that we had, again, not to throw any dirt, but I see people still there that it doesn't matter what they do or how they do it, and they still tote the company line, if you will. They're charging on. I'm going to be a company man, and to an extent, as an employer, I want that from my employees, but I also want them to speak to values, right? I want them to say, look, this isn't the right thing to do. We need
Yeah.
to pivot or we need to change. Raise your hands. So we're doing what is right by people.
Well, that's when, and I don't want to get into a commercial for my services, but when we start consulting with clients, that's one of the areas that I start because I used to think that coming up with your core values, the belief system of the company, I used to think that was like tree hugging hippie kind of stuff. Like it's just you write some words down on the paper, you throw it in a drawer, kumbaya, we all hug, do a chant or whatever, whatever those weirdo people do that do that. But what I've come to realize is that is the foundation of the belief system, which then guides all of the actions. And I think if we would have done a better job in the beginning of truly defining our core values and then having our policies and our processes set up on that foundation, we could have all done a better job at the leadership level, at the employee level, calling out when things weren't in alignment
Mm,
with those core values. And because I don't think we did a great job setting those up, we didn't really have that guiding light or guiding principle of, hey, wait a minute, we have one group of people thinking we should be doing this and treating people this way and having these kind of policies and not having phone numbers and, you know, making it difficult for people to reach us. And then other people saying, and it doesn't matter which side of the line you fall on, but you can't have two people and two policies and two philosophies where one, we make it tough for people to get a hold of us. So they have to do email. That way we got record of it. And then the other one is, no, man, let's just solve problems. Let's get people on the phone. Let's just handle it. And because we didn't have those guiding principles, we didn't really have anything that our company or our clients or, I mean, our team members could look at and say, hey, wait a minute, I am raising my hand. We're out of alignment here with what we're supposed to be doing as a company.
yeah. How do you balance ambition with maintaining personal well being and relationships?
Ambition and personal well-being, I think if those two things are aligned, then I think they actually can feed one another. If they're out of alignment, then that causes a lot of friction. So, my ambition, I think just about everybody that knows me, I can't believe we've waited this long to talk about it in the episode, but knows that I really enjoy running. And it's not so much the running as it is the experience of being outside, being in nature. And I do trail running, which is different than just, road running, going as fast as you can. I just like to be outside, but it's become this thing of how far can I go? What else can I accomplish? But because that's in alignment with what I like to do, and I've surrounded myself with other people who have that same ambition. I'm not like 9 of us going this way and I'm going the other way. It's I've surrounded myself with 10 people that we're all going in the same direction. And so I think that ambition, if you can find your tribe or your people or however you want to phrase it, I think you can figure out how to use that ambition to fuel you and other people in your network or your inner circle or whatever to be able to all move together in that same direction using that ambition. I know I have a good friend that also ultra runner and unfortunately didn't surround himself with people that supported that, and ultimately it caused some challenges in their personal relationships because you can't have true ambition and charge after something and not have the support of the people around you. So unfortunately, through just life events, they've now wound up finding themselves a different community. And so now they are aligned with people who are supporting what they want to accomplish. And it's not just about running, by the way. I mean, that's about finances, it's about life, it's about uh, emotions and relationships. And yeah.
What's the one habit or routine you credit most for keeping you on track?
Well, that's to presume I'm on track. So, what- uh, quite
You
presumptuous of
got it
you.
all figured out,
Um,
Tony. So
yeah, yeah. I think there's two. I think I mentioned the first one already, which is to be courageous. I think um, I have learned to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that we oftentimes, I think it kind of comes down to me, it comes down to two things. I'm either doing things really well, but then that means I'm stagnant. I'm not growing. I'm not trying the next thing. I'm not trying to expand. I'm not trying to be better. I'm not trying to go farther. I'm not trying to any of those things. And a lot of people get comfortable. They get to where they are performing at a certain level. They're perceived at a certain level. People have a certain image of them. And to do anything more than that could tarnish that image, could shatter that vision or the image that people have of you. But I've learned that anybody that's doing anything bigger, better, farther, faster, whatever, beyond what they're currently doing, they're going to fail. They're going to fail and then they're going to learn from it. They're going to fail and learn from it. And they're going to continue to get better. But nobody is going to do something brand new and have that be 100% successful right off the bat. So I've learned that when I start to feel like I've got imposter syndrome, I'm moving in the right direction. It used to scare me when I would get that. Now it's kind of like, okay, I'm feeling it. Like I'm in the zone now where I'm learning something new, I'm expanding. And if I fail, I'm okay with that. Like obviously it stings, nobody, this is all right, you can cut this out if you don't want to have it in the podcast, but my daughter got married recently and I went out because my legs are bigger. Then, I got these big runner legs and I've got these tiny little chicken arms. And so, like, to buy a suit off the rack, the jacket is the wrong size for the pants. So I had to order a custom suit. So we order this custom suit. It comes in, I go to try it on. We're going to tailor it, do the cuffs or the legs and just do this tailoring, bring the back of the jacket in just a little bit. And when I go to put it on, I zip the zipper up and like the zipper zips up, but the teeth don't go together. So I zip it down, zip it back up, and it's like So I tell them, I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with this zipper, but you got to fix it." And they're like, "Okay, well, we'll get it fixed by the time you pick it up with the tailoring." So I go to pick it up, zip the zipper up, and it it held,
Oh,
like held together. I'm like, "Okay, they fixed it." So I go and I don't put it on again for another like 10 days or something till I'm getting dressed for my daughter's wedding. I go and they do the first look thing where the dad sees the bride, and as I'm getting ready to go out there, I go and I putting on my pants, I zip my zipper up, and it doesn't work. It zips up and zip back down. And so, the whole night, this whole evening, I've planned I'm going to do my first dance with my daughter, the father-daughter dance. I'm going to be doing a toast in front of all the people. And I had two ways to go with that. I could be like, "Oh my God, people are going to see me with my pants down," essentially, right? Like my fly is going to be open. And I tried to pin it and it wouldn't stay pinned. So I had two ways to go. I could be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing," or I'm just gonna tell people what's going on. And so I kinda took the power away from that thing, and, we joked about it, and I probably had to zip it up 7 or 8 times that night to get it to stay up, but the reason I'm bringing that up is that no matter what we try to do, we put ourselves out in front of people. I was in front of, 130 people or whatever, giving a toast, worrying about my fly, or just being in the moment and blessing the two great, wonderful people that were getting married. And I don't know, I've just felt like that was that imposter syndrome. It was similar to that where people are going to look at you and see your flaws, but most people don't really pay that much attention to you anyways. They're too worried about is their own fly down.
yeah. So how'd you start that? Okay, folks, you're going to see a different side of me today.
Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
No, I totally agree. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a great perspective. And reality is
Yeah.
people are worried about their own world and are not worried
Yeah.
about your zipper. So
Yeah.
kudos to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to mention something that is, I guess, contrarian to societal views today. And that is, in order for me to be successful, I've got to grind. And I don't need a wife or a husband. I need to be single because I could do this and I could work hard. And definitely don't bring kids into my life because that just adds a different challenge. Now, to me and you, how has being a husband, being a father of three, changed your way of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, when I said nothing was off limits, I should have said that. No, I got lucky. I met Pam I was a junior in high school. I was 16 years old, and I was a bit of a mess. I was not. I didn't have the best outlook, I guess, and meeting her kind of got me back on the right track. And having the support of good family and a good spouse, I just don't know how people do it without it. I've got a good friend that, without giving too much of their own personal details, they had a business and they were looking at having to give about $7 million because they just got a divorce and they were having to split up assets. And I'm like, think about how hard he had to work, how much time he had to take away from his spouse and his relationship to be able to make that 14 million to then give half of it away and lose their spouse. And so, for me, I've not always been good at it, but I've always thought I need to I need to do the best I can to support my wife and my family, and the kids just give me that motivation to try to be better. I think I'd be a wreck if I didn't have other people that were counting on me to do the right thing. I think it'd be a whole lot easier to just kind of be a dirtball, I guess.
Yeah, we've talked in the past that, Pam's family kind of took you under their wing and and to build onto that, it sounds like Pam's dad, your father-in-law, became a close friend through that
Yeah.
process, or a mentor, if you will. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, my parents split up when I was about 14, and so then imagine a couple years later, I meet Pam, and her parents were still together, and she came from a big Italian family. And when you're a teenager, you don't really see all the things that are really going on in a family. You just kind of see the shiny bits. And so looking back, there were things that went on with her family, her extended family, that I didn't know about till years later. But at least seeing that marriage between her mother and father uh, gave me something to aspire to with my own relationship with Pam. And we got married really young. I got married at 21. I had my first kid at 23, and then we had another one 4 years later. And then we had Isabella a few years after that. And so having that path, having somebody out in front that you can watch do that, whether it was a mentorship or it was, it's hard to cut your own path in life without having a guide out in front of you, even if they don't know they're your guide. Having somebody to emulate um, makes it easier to made it easier for me anyway to find the right path for me.
Awesome. One more question. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
What's funny is I ask that question on my podcast all the time.
Really?
And yeah, so it's, if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be? And I think for me, you and I have very similar paths in different areas of life. And I think I've made some big mistakes financially. I've had a lot, and then I gambled with it. When you've got a winning streak going, you sort of become numb to what could happen, and you think it will never happen. And so, financially, I was doing quite well, and then not doing so well. And then you and I have learned some different lessons in financing. But one of the things that, um, for me, if I were to go back and tell myself some advice, is to be more consistent. Because whether it's through investing or through running or investing in your relationship, it's not the big things. Like, I can't go out and do really well in running by only going and doing my long runs on my Saturdays. It's the incremental progress over time. It's the boring every day, kiss your wife when you wake up, kiss your wife when you go to bed. Like, those are the moments that you build a relationship. It's the same thing with investing. It's to put the money back. It's not go out and have the big win, because sometimes those big wins turn into big losses, but it's the little incremental thing. And I think that people are looking for, what's that big quick hit? What's the quick hit thing? And I wish I would have known this 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Just be consistent. You don't have to be great. You just have to be consistent. And consistency leads to greatness.
Great advice. Great advice, Tony. Well, Tony, thank you for being vulnerable with us today. I enjoyed it. You know this, but I consider you such a close friend, a mentor. I've called you in dark moments and called you in happy moments, and I always appreciate our conversations together. So thank you for your time and putting it out there today.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I can't wait to reciprocate.
You're the co-host. You don't. You have a open invite always. I mean, you're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cheers, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Shawn. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise of what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur.
If today's episode hit home, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.